read the War Powers Acts, and you read Whiting on that, which is the top authority, bar none, he came out and said that, the Constitution, it just lays aside its peacetime and goes into the wartime effect. And it's like night and day. But it isn't destroyed, it's just living under different principles based on war powers and based on peacetime.
Do war powers have anything to do with something that seems curious? I mean, you hear about this War of Independence, et cetera, and not too long after, do you have the military turned upon the citizenry with the Whiskey Rebellion?
Oh, yeah, the Sedition Acts, that's what they did, They turned around, and they wanted to protect the Crown's property and holdings here. And, the people in power write the laws, they write history, they write everything. And what happened was, they, in the Whiskey Rebellion and everything, they didn't want to be taxed. Now, the shoe's on the other foot now, okay? Here you've got Washington and all these people who was against the king for all the stuff that was going on. And now you've got the people, the farmers in the Whiskey Rebellion against Washington. And in other words, Washington and them became England again.
Yep.
So then they said, well, we'll institute the Sedition Acts. And that's what they did. And they did that under the War Powers Act. And that's how they operated the Sedition Act.
All right, the Sedition Act, I think when it was last used, and you probably will upbraid me if I get this wrong, but I think was a case somewhere, around World War I? Was that Abrams versus Schenck?
It was, the Speakeasy years.
Well, it was something where an individual was handing out tracts, if you will.
The what?
Tracts, or,
Oh, the land.
Well, no. He was handing out propaganda.
Oh, okay.
During World War I don't know what. I'd have to go back to my law book, and the one I have. But what happened was, I think Oliver Wendell Holmes might have been the vote that swayed this case, and I think later on he lamented the fact that he did it. In other words, they did enact the Sedition Act against this individual for his utilization of free speech that was seen somewhat perilous at times of war.
Yeah.
All right. Now, are you familiar with that one at all?
Not really.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and research it again. I did read it, but, it just blew by my mind.
That's all right. No, and I mean, it's been a long time for me, too. But what did strike me was the fact that, I'm surprised in a way that right now they haven't done that and said anybody who speaks against the government in this time, quote, of war, will be tried for sedition.
Well, they don't have to under the War Powers Act.
Okay, so, all right, great. That's germane also. Go ahead.
Yeah. They're one and the same, but they don't have to come out and say Sedition Act.
Okay, so in other words, when we look at the cases like with Juan Padilla, was it Juan Padilla? Yeah, Juan Padilla. Or Jose, or whatever.
Jose, yeah.
Jose, okay. The thing was, he's an American citizen and granted no privileges, I guess you would say.
Right.
Even though he's an American citizen, locked up, and nobody knows what's going on with him. And
that's right.
So in a way, that is a scene.
That's the elimination of the habeas.
Right.
The privilege of the habeas. That's why they can do what they do down in Guantanamo Bay, because it's actually a Sedition Act glossed over and prettied up to a different name.
And my point is that they never have to bring in the Sedition Act, which I've been waiting for them to kick back in. They don't have to. It's already here.
It's already here.
Okay. The other thing I would like to mention to you, I don't know if you've ever countenanced this, but there is a book that's written, and it's online. It's also in hardcover, that's called Toward an American Revolution. Does that ring a bell at all?
No.
All right. The author's name is Jerry Fresia, Fresia. You can find that book online.
Okay.
Now, you may agree with what he states about the Constitution. However, he isn't a avowed Marxist, so we can't really go there either.
Right.
But what he says about the Constitution may, in fact, be very valid. And if there's ever a time you might want to look through there, you can find it by just searching on those terms.
Okay.
And I've since talking to you, and also in other areas, reading such, it seemed very much that the Constitution was almost like a unicorn.
Yeah.
Very legendary, supposed to be a great thing, but in essence, it was an elitist document.
Yes, it was.
And that's because the lawyers took care of themselves.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All right, going back to the War Powers Act and how as it impacts us now, and the reason why I contacted you, because suddenly, to me, I got the V8 slap upside the head, and I said, could this be, this War Powers never really being revoked, the reason why, from the days of the Korean War, we've never had anything that has been congressionally proclaimed a war, and yet we call them wars from Korea right to now. Now, is there a connectivity there?
Yeah, because I'm going to read you page 189 of the police power on the executive war powers. Although the Constitution itself does not expressly state by what authority the privilege of the writ may be suspended, it had been a general opinion up to the time of the Civil War that Congress alone, not the President now, Congress alone had the power to judge of the exigency requiring that action. The opinion had been induced not only by the position of a habeas corpus clause, that the part of the Constitution devoted to the legislative department, but also by precedent, by the precise practice under the Constitution, and by the weight of authority. And they footnoted 29, which was Ex parte Bowman, 1807, story commentaries on the Constitution. And what they had done is the War Powers comes under Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2. There's a bunch of them in there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the one of them, and that falls right into what you were talking about.
All right, so therefore, we have been officially
under war, never been out of the peacetime operation of the Constitution since 1863.
Well, we did declare war in 1 and 2 by Congress.
Right, Congress declared that, yeah.
All right, so when we look at that, they're just playing according to Hoyle?
That's all, yeah, because remember, they overturned the president's wanting to abolish the War Powers Constitution and get back to a peacetime Constitution after Lincoln was killed, and they says, "Oh no, we got to have this control. We got to control the people, And the problem is when we're reconstructing everything, all the northern states are on the same footing as the southern states, so they're the enemy too.
Even the northern states?
All the northern states were, because remember, the Constitution in both wartime and peacetime says no state, they'll all be equal and have all equal footing. How can you create the southern states on a different footing under war powers on the north,
right.
Under peacetime? You can't do that. So rather than take the 13 southern states and declare them,
rogue or
out of the Union,
right. Mm-hmm.
Well, wait a minute. They said you can't destroy the Union and they can't leave. So now they're under control, and now anything in the Constitution is done, the northern states and the southern states has to be on the same footing, so they turned around and made every one of the northern states the same enemy as the southern states. And that was all done in the Reconstruction Acts, and that's why the War Powers Act still exists today, and people have no idea they're operating under war powers, and has ever since that 37th Congress put that into effect. 12 Stat 319.
I want to turn to...
I went and I asked many of the researchers that I knew at the time, do you know when they repealed 12 Stat 319? Of course, none of the top researchers that I had inquired about, this goes back like 15 years ago, not one of them said, yeah, da-da-da. Every one of them says, I don't know what you're talking about. They didn't even know 12 Stat 319 existed. So I found it, but I had to work backwards. You can't work from the beginning. I couldn't find it. I had to work backwards from present day and follow the trail back to find out that 12 Stat, and how I did it, I went to War Powers, Title 50. And I searched every title, every subchapter in there, and I found 212, 213, and 215. And at the bottom of those particular sections, it says source, 12 Stat 319. Then I says, okay, if it's here, let me go to Title 28. So I went to Title 28, And I went to 2460, 2461, 24, all the way up to 2465. And every one of them had the source of that authority for that statute, 12 Stat 319, 1861. It took me a year to do that because there was no library. I went to the library. There was no. I didn't have any computer at that time.
Would that be more easily accessible by the computer, or is that gone down the memory hole?
No. You can go online and you can go into Title 50 now and go to 12 Stat. Not 12 Stat. Title 50. Go to Chapter 215, 213, and 212, and you go all the way down to the bottom. You'll see it, and you'll see the source of the statute that exists today in Title 50 under War Powers, and you do the same thing under Title 28, but you have to go backwards in it. It doesn't. Title 50 does, but the 28, you have to wrangle around to find it, and it's there.
This program is produced by Visigoth Incorporated. Any rebroadcast or use of this program without the express consent of Visigoth Incorporated is strictly encouraged. I'm Phil McCracken, the voice behind the voice, and thank you for listening.